The tension in the lab was unbearable. We couldn't sit still anymore. The air felt thicker, colder, as if the walls were closing in, trapping us in the very place that had once been our refuge. It wasn't just the physical cold. It was something deeper, something that made every breath feel like an effort. We were all afraid, not just of what was out there, but of what we had become. Rachel's words echoed in my mind. We need to leave. But deep down, I knew leaving wasn't an option. Not anymore. The entity, whatever it was, wasn't just going to let us walk away. We were its prisoners, and now it was playing with us. Eric paced the common room, his eyes wild, his movements erratic. "We can't just sit here," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "We need to do something. We have to fight back." "I don't think we can fight it," I said, my voice strained. "Whatever it is, it's too strong. It's been waiting for us, and now it's using us." Dr. Maxwell, who had been eerily silent for the past few hours, finally spoke up. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "I've seen this before. Not like this, but similar. The entity feeds on isolation, on fear. The more we fear it, the stronger it becomes." "What do you mean you've seen this before?" Rachel asked, her voice trembling. Dr. Maxwell didn't answer right away. His eyes were distant, his mind seemingly far away. Then, after a long pause, he spoke again. "I've been a part of a similar project before. Not here, not in this lab, but I've worked on projects that studied entities like this one, forces that existed long before us. It was never supposed to go this far, but..." He trailed off, his voice faltering. "I wasn't in charge then, and I didn't realize just how dangerous it was until it was too late." "Dangerous? How much more dangerous can it get, Dr. Maxwell? We're all going insane, and you've known about this the whole time?" Dr. Maxwell didn't flinch at Eric's anger. He just nodded slowly. "Yes, I knew there was a risk, but the potential to unlock something so ancient we couldn't resist. And now look where we are," Rachel said, her voice bitter. "We're stuck here. This thing is inside our heads, feeding off our fear, and there's nothing we can do to stop it." I didn't want to admit it, but Rachel was right. We were too far gone. The entity had already won. It had fed on our isolation, on our fear, and now it was manipulating us, using the lab as its playground. We were pawns in a game we didn't even understand, but I refused to accept that we were powerless. "We don't have much time," I said, my voice suddenly steady. "We need to confront it, face it head on. Whatever happens, we can't let it take any more of us. We have to break the cycle." Eric stopped pacing and looked at me, his face filled with both fear and determination. "What do you mean, confront it?" I said, "We have to go to the source. We have to go to the center of the lab where the power is coming from. If we can shut it down, maybe we can stop this thing from feeding on us." "But what if it doesn't stop? What if it's already too late?" I didn't have an answer, but we had no choice. We were running out of options. If we didn't try, we'd be lost forever. "We're not going to sit here and wait for it to kill us," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "We're going to fight back. We're going to find a way to stop it." The four of us, Dr. Maxwell, Rachel, Eric, and I, made our way to the heart of the lab. The hum that had been present for so long was deafening now, vibrating through the walls, the floor, and into our bones. It felt like the entire lab was alive, breathing with us, suffocating us. As we entered the central chamber, the temperature dropped even further. My breath came out in visible clouds, and I could see the others shivering. But it wasn't just the cold. It was the sense of dread, of something watching us, waiting. In the center of the room was a large machine, a strange, ancient-looking device that seemed out of place in a modern research lab. It was humming with power, its lights flickering and dimming in a rhythm that matched the strange hum filling the room. "This is it," Dr. Maxwell whispered. "The source of the power. The machine was designed to draw energy from the environment, but it's been feeding on more than that. It's feeding on us." I didn't understand how a machine could feed on people, but the fear that I had felt since we arrived told me that it didn't matter. It was real. Whatever it was real, and we were in its grip. Eric stepped forward, his hand trembling as he reached for the controls. What do we do? How do we stop it? Dr. Maxwell hesitated. We need to cut off the power source. If we can shut down the machine, we might be able to disrupt the entity's hold on the lab. I didn't want to waste any more time. The hum was growing louder, more insistent, and I could feel the presence tightening its grip on us. Whatever had been hidden in this lab, whatever was pulling the strings, was about to reveal itself. I stepped up to the machine and took a deep breath. Let's do it. The moment I touched the control panel, the lights in the room flickered wildly. The hum turned into a screeching noise, the walls vibrating violently, as if the entire building was shaking under the pressure. It was like the lab itself was alive, breathing with us, suffocating us. Suddenly, the machine surged with a burst of energy. A blast of cold air hit us all, pushing us back. The temperature dropped to near freezing, and the air was thick with the presence. The whispers grew louder. I'm watching you. Come closer. The walls seemed to pulse, and I could feel the presence moving closer, like it was suffocating us, filling the room with darkness. The machine was fighting back, resisting our attempts to shut it down. We weren't going to give up, not now. With a final, desperate push, I slammed my hand on the control panel, forcing it down with everything I had. There was a blinding flash of light, a deafening sound, and then silence. The hum stopped. The cold retreated. The presence was gone. We were left in the dark, breathing heavily, unsure if what just happened was real. But it was. We had done it. We had stopped it.
The silence that followed was like nothing I had ever felt. It wasn't the usual, oppressive silence that hung over the lab, nor was it the unnatural stillness that seemed to come from nowhere. This was different. This silence felt like a heavy weight had been lifted from our shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe without that suffocating sense of dread following me. But as we stood there, catching our breath and trying to make sense of what had just happened, I realized one thing. The silence wasn't comforting. It was hollow, empty. It was the kind of silence that only comes after something has been destroyed. The machine, the source of the presence's power, was dead. The hum, the whispers, the shadows that had followed us for so long, they were gone. But in their place was a deep, unsettling void. For a moment, we just stood there in the dark. It felt like we had been holding our breath for so long that we didn't know how to exhale. The weight of what we had just done, of what we had just faced, pressed down on us like a heavy fog. I looked around at the others, Dr. Maxwell, Rachel, Eric. They were all standing frozen, their eyes wide, their bodies tense. They knew, just like I did, that things had changed. But what had we really accomplished? Had we stopped the entity, or had we only postponed the inevitable? Rachel was the first to speak, her voice hoarse and weak. Is it over? Is it really over? I didn't have an answer. I wanted to tell her yes, that it was over, that we had beaten it, but deep down, I knew better. There was a part of me that was still afraid, still aware of the darkness that had been inside this place for so long. We don't know, I said, my voice shaky. We have to hope that it's over. But what if it comes back? What if it's still here, just waiting for us to make a mistake? Dr. Maxwell finally spoke, his voice heavy with regret. We've only just scratched the surface. The entity, it's been here for centuries. The lab was built on its foundation, on its power. We didn't destroy it, not completely. We just disrupted it. It's not gone. Not entirely. His words sent a chill through me. Disrupted, not destroyed. Rachel sank into a chair, her face pale. Then what do? We can't stay here. We're not safe. None of us are. She was right. As much as I wanted to believe we had won, I couldn't ignore the feeling in my gut that told me we hadn't. Not yet. I turned to Eric. He was staring at the machine, his face expressionless. He hadn't said a word since we shut it down. His mind was somewhere else, lost in thought. We need to get out of here, Eric said, his voice low but determined. "We can't stay. Not after what we've seen, what we've done." I looked at him, then at Rachel, and finally at Dr. Maxwell. The weight of their gazes told me everything I needed to know. We couldn't stay. The lab, the place that had once been our home, was now a tomb, a trap. "We leave tomorrow," I said, my voice steady. "We gather what we can, and we head for the nearest station. We make it out, no matter what." The others nodded. There was no argument. The choice was clear. But as I stood there, looking at the shattered remnants of the machine, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were leaving something behind, something important, something we didn't fully understand. We spent the rest of the night packing up. The hours felt like they stretched on forever. But the closer we got to the door, the more unsettled I became. The silence, once a relief, now felt oppressive. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the entity, whatever it was still here, waiting for us to make a mistake. The next morning, we gathered by the door, our gear packed, ready to leave. The storm outside was still raging, the wind howling through the cracks in the walls, but we had to leave. We had no choice. "Are we really doing this?" Rachel asked, her voice trembling. Are we really leaving?" I looked at her and nodded. "We have no other choice. We're getting out of here." Dr. Maxwell gave me a long look, but he didn't say anything. He knew, just like I did, that it wasn't just about leaving the lab. It was about surviving. Whatever the entity was, whatever power it held, we had to get as far away from it as possible. We stepped outside, into the howling storm. The cold hit us immediately, biting into our skin like needles. But the feeling of the cold was nothing compared to the weight of what we had just done. The lab was behind us, and the entity, for now, seemed to be gone. But there was still an emptiness, a gnawing feeling in the back of my mind. Had we really escaped? Had we truly stopped it? Or had we only postponed the inevitable? As we made our way through the snow, the wind tearing at us, I kept looking back at the lab, even though I knew I shouldn't. I couldn't help it. There was something in me that still felt connected to that place, something that told me this wasn't over, that whatever had been buried beneath the ice wasn't done with us yet. But for now, all we could do was walk away.
We walked for what felt like hours, the cold gnawing at our bones, the wind whipping through our clothes. Every step felt heavier, more deliberate, as if the world itself was trying to keep us from leaving. But we couldn't stop, not now, not after everything we had been through. The storm was relentless, blinding us with its icy fingers. Snow blew across the barren landscape, reducing visibility to mere feet. But we pressed on, driven by something beyond fear, a need to escape, to outrun whatever had been lurking in that lab, feeding off our fear, our isolation. I couldn't stop thinking about the entity. What had it been? What had we really discovered about it? Dr. Maxwell had warned us that we hadn't destroyed it, that it wasn't gone. But we had to move forward. There was no turning back. After a few hours, the storm began to die down. The wind eased, and the world outside felt quieter, less oppressive. The lab was no longer in sight, just an indistinct shape swallowed up by the vast snow. And yet, there was still that feeling, that nagging sensation deep in the pit of my stomach that something wasn't right. We hadn't escaped it. I glanced over at the others. Rachel walked beside me, her face pale and drawn, her eyes distant. Eric was ahead, his shoulders hunched, moving with a frantic energy that belied his exhaustion. Dr. Maxwell was behind, his face tight with some emotion I couldn't read. "We're almost there," I said, trying to reassure myself more than anyone else. "We just need to make it through the next few miles and we'll be safe." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. We had left the lab behind, but the entity had never really been confined to that space.
It was part of the lab, part of the land, part of the isolation that surrounded us. It was more than a presence, it was a force, one that had been waiting for the right moment to act. And that moment was now. As we trudged through the snow, I noticed something, a shadow. Just beyond the edge of my vision, it flitted by, too fast to be anything I could explain. I paused, heart racing, my breath catching in my throat. I turned to look at the others, but they didn't seem to notice. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Rachel shook her head, her eyes wide. "See what?" I said quickly, trying to dismiss it. But I couldn't shake the feeling. The shadow was back. It was watching us again. I shook my head, trying to clear the thoughts that were clouding my mind. The entity wasn't just something that lived in the lab. It was in us too, feeding on our fear, growing stronger with every step we took. It had followed us, and we had no idea how to stop it. I wanted to call out to the others, to warn them, but the words died in my throat. They were already on edge. Rachel was barely holding it together, and Eric was too consumed with his own paranoia. Dr. Maxwell, though silent, seemed like he was holding on to his own secret. Whatever he knew, he wasn't sharing. And then, it happened. The snow around us seemed to shift. It wasn't just the wind, it was something else. A ripple in the air, a tremor beneath the surface. We all stopped, frozen in place, staring at each other in confusion and fear. "Did you feel that?" Rachel whispered, her voice trembling. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, it's happening." Dr. Maxwell stepped forward, his face pale, his eyes wild. He whispered, "It's not over. We didn't stop it. We just gave it more time." Before I could respond, the ground beneath us cracked. The snow shifted violently, and with it, a sound, a low, guttural growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at all once. I turned just in time to see it, a figure emerging from the snow, tall and dark, its edges flickering in and out of existence, like a shadow cast by some unseen light. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't the storm, it was something real, something that had been following us from the moment we left the lab. The whispers returned, louder now, almost deafening. "Come closer," it hissed. "You can't escape." I stumbled back, my breath catching in my chest. No, this can't be real. But it was. The entity wasn't just in the lab. It was out here too. It had followed us. Dr. Maxwell fell to his knees, his eyes wide with terror. He repeated, "It's not over. We never should have come here. We never should have opened that door." I turned to run, but my legs felt heavy. The snow beneath me seemed to shift, to swallow me whole. The shadow, no, the presence, was everywhere. It was in the air, in the ground, in the very cold that gripped my lungs and made it hard to breathe. I tried to scream, but the sound was lost in the storm. It didn't matter. We were trapped. And then, something worse happened. The presence, the shadow, it split. It wasn't just one figure anymore. It was a mass of them, shapes, shadows, creatures, all flickering in and out of sight, each one more terrifying than the last. "Run!" I screamed, but it was too late. The last thing I remember was the ice-cold grip on my arm, pulling me into the darkness, into the nothingness. The whispers were all around me, louder now, the force of it overwhelming. And then, silence. I woke up, but it wasn't like before. The snow was still there, the storm was still howling, but we weren't moving, we weren't escaping. I looked around, and I saw them, Dr. Maxwell, Rachel, Eric, but they weren't the same. They weren't alive. They were part of it now.
I couldn't move. My body was frozen, my thoughts scrambled. And the worst part? I knew it wasn't over. The entity had followed us out here, and it had taken us all. We were its prisoners, now and forever. And I couldn't escape.